wellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
You're listening to A Quirky Journey, the healthy family podcast with your hosts Jo Whitten and Fuad Kassab. Hi everybody, it's Jo Whitten here and we are about to start another wonderful podcast. I've got my bestest buddy Fuad with me. Hi Fuad.
G'day, Jo. How's it
Oh,
going?
here we go. He's going to bung on the Aussie accent. Let's just go back to your usual one.
All right. Jo, yeah, you were going to say something when I interrupted?
I was just going to say that as you probably know from the title of the podcast, that we mostly talk about eczema in this podcast. And I think that's such a big issue for many of the parents that we talk to and adults. Why does it happen and what can you do about it? So that's what we talk about in this podcast with Liezel.
Yeah, it's a good in-depth look and very much in line with what we talk about. But she does have a few interesting ideas that we haven't explored or talked about, and it's fantastic to have her on the show to talk about them. So we'll move on to the podcast in a second. And yeah, so without further ado, we will move on to our podcast with Liezel Barnard from Weleda. Our guest today is Liezel Barnard, who is the trainer and naturopath for Weleda Australia. I met Liezel a few weeks ago at About Life, and it was a beautiful day. And we sat down and had a chat, and we found out that we had a lot in common. One of them is that she was an IT person in an ex-life, just like I was, and that she got into natural health through some skin problems that she had, which is exactly how I got into things as well. And it was a meeting of kindred spirits, and it was a nice opportunity for us to get to geek out on all things about gut health and skin health. And we thought that would be a great opportunity for us to bring Liezel on board to talk about these things and illuminate some of the aspects of skin health that we don't think about, and try to understand a little bit more about holistic healthcare for skin. And our gut as well, because both of them are connected. So, Liezel, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Fuad.
Thank you for coming, Liezel.
Thank you, Jo.
Liezel, can you maybe begin by telling us a bit of a story about your background and how you got into doing what you do today?
Yes, thanks, Fuad. So as you've mentioned, I was in IT before. I've had quite a few different skin issues. My main issue was Blepharitis, and I've had that since a teenager. So for people who don't know what Blepharitis is, apparently it's quite common, although I haven't really seen many people with it. So it's basically eyelid inflammation. And so usually eyelids are really red. They look really inflamed. They are sore, itchy. There can be sort of a crusty buildup on them as well, in between the eyelashes. You get styes and cysts. The eyes are usually quite red as well, and the eyes are quite dry. So I've had this since as a teenager. So as
Sounds
you can
painful.
imagine, yes, painful, and it's very visible.
Yeah.
So, as a young woman, just when you want to look nice and wear a bit of makeup and all of that. So it was very frustrating. And as typical of a type of chronic disease, I went to many different specialists and antibiotics and cortisones, and I also went to many different homeopaths and naturopaths, and I tried all kinds of herbs and homeopathy and exclusion diets. So it was quite frustrating. And that's what drove me to go study naturopathy and see if I can understand my body better and see if I can also help myself. And it only actually got better after I finished naturopathy, and it was my first year of work. And at that stage, I've seen a homeopath for a year, and I decided to stop seeing him. And I was taking a very strong grapeseed extract, which is anti-inflammatory. And I also stopped. I weaned myself off cortisone eye drops. I've been on cortisone eye drops for 5 years. And it started getting better.
Oh.
So who knows what exactly what helped. Maybe it's even other things as well, just having a more healthy lifestyle. But yeah, it got better, and it's still there, but it's very, very mild. So, I just have to look after it now. So, yeah. And my other issue is keratolysis, exfoliative keratolysis, also quite a weird skin disease. And it's basically, I get sort of like dry blisters on the palms of my hands and the soles of my feet. It's a dry blister, so it's not filled with any water. And then the skin just peels off. And in summer, it basically gets activated by heat. And in winter, it basically goes dormant. So it is a reaction to heat. So, yeah, that's another little issue. And then I also have acne rosacea. So I just really have to be quite careful what I put on my skin. So, if you look at the picture, it's a sort of inflammatory picture there. Yeah. It is pretty much under control. Of course, I would like it to completely disappear. But as many of these things, sometimes you just have to, it's definitely mild enough. And I just basically manage it at the moment. So, yeah.
I'm just interested with the eyelids issue. So when you said you just have to manage it, is there something that you use on your eyelids now that helps, some kind of cream? Or is it more diet? Or
Okay, yes, that's a good question. So it's so tricky with the eyes because they're so sensitive. It's such a sensitive area.
Because I've got a daughter with very sensitive eyes, and hers gets a little bit red, but she's pretty good. Like the optometrist gave her some kind of horrible chemical stuff to put on, and then I just went no.
Yeah, exactly. And, unfortunately, there's almost nothing you can use because all of those things will have preservatives in them. Yeah. So, and I just find my eyes just react to anything, really. Yeah. So I will, especially now, because the air is a little bit dry in Sydney at the moment. So I have started using just those disposable eye drops. So just those single-use ones. And they don't have any preservatives in them.
Is that like a saline solution or no?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's like a saline solution. Yeah, so you basically just and there's no preservatives, and you just basically open it, we use it once, and throw it away. So I sometimes use that, but then the main thing for me is just to not do anything that irritates my eyes. So I wear minimal makeup, and I stay away from contact lenses because that's a real disaster for me. So I just wear glasses, and I also just try not to avoid water contact with my eyes. So especially when I swim, I always wear goggles. Even if I just go into the waves, I always wear swimming goggles. So it seems for me, it's more just preventing it from getting upset or irritated.
Does sunlight affect it at all? Do you have to wear glasses in the sun, like sunglasses?
Yes, always wear sunglasses.
That's what the optometrist told my daughter, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it's more about just looking after it. They're very sensitive, so I just basically have to look after them. Yeah.
And you mentioned the grapeseed extract. That you started taking after you stopped seeing the homeopath. Is that where did I understand that correctly?
I took the grapeseed extract probably for quite some time. And then I decided to double dose it. So, what I was using was Ansogenol, which is quite a strong grapeseed extract. So I was taking it for a little while already. And then, of course, after it got better, I continued taking it for a little while too. So, so that's why it's quite hard to know exactly what worked. Because at the same time, I was also, taking myself off cortisone eye drops. Now, of course, the cortisone suppresses your immune system. So it helps with reducing the inflammation. But, of course, it also suppresses the immune system. So, because there's a bacterial component as well. So, yeah.
I want to sort of focus on that cortisone maybe a little bit down the track and just to understand what the current medicinal approach is towards things like eczema or skin issues. Sure. And one thing that we kind of like to categorize things, and all the diseases that you mentioned have different names and different symptoms on our body. But you also mentioned inflammation as something that is maybe the underlying cause. And I'd like to sort of get your opinion on what you think skin issues come from in general? And do they have like a single root cause, or do we really have separate diseases for each one? And how do you think, what have you seen as a good strategy to move forward with treating skin issues?
Okay, so there is, and like with most diseases, there's a strong genetic component, and then there's a strong environmental component as well. So if we look at the genetic component, often people that have skin issues have a disrupted skin barrier. So, it's often a bit more of a dry skin. And there's a lot of very current research that really focuses now on the skin barrier dysfunction in skin diseases. So some very good research. Have you guys heard of the filaggrin gene?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So, and this, of course, is not this. It's always much more complex than this. But there's some good research on the filaggrin gene. So basically, how it works is that, so I'll just explain how the skin grows. So we make new skin cells in the basal layer of the epidermis. So the epidermis is the outside layer of the skin. And then over a period of 28 days, they slowly get pushed up. So as the new skin cells are made, they slowly push up the older skin cells. And then the older skin cells, basically they mature, they flatten, and they become quite tough. And they overlap each other, and they form the stratum corneum, or the outside layer of the skin. And so they basically like a brick wall. They're flat, they overlap each other, and in between them sits the skin's lipids, or the skin fats. And the skin lipids is basically like mortar. And that forms a very lovely barrier, and it's almost waterproof. So that basically will keep the moisture inside the skin, keeps it nice and healthy, but it also protects the skin from anything from the outside. So it's anything like viruses, bacteria, or any type of allergens or chemicals. So what we find with people that, especially with people with eczema, is that they often have a faulty filaggrin gene. So the filaggrin gene basically helps those skin cells to flatten. So as they mature, they become nice and flat. So if you have a faulty filaggrin gene, the skin cells don't become flat; they're more round. So it means they're not going to form a nice brick wall. They're going to not overlap each other. And that means that the fats in between is not going to sit in place as well as they should be. And it means that your barrier then is disrupted. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically it means that water is going to much more easily escape through the skin cells. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the skin is going to dry out. If the skin dries out, then it can't perform its normal function. It becomes inflamed. And it also means that things can come in from the outside and irritate the skin and then set up an immune reaction. So, and research have found that, so this was done on children. So 50% of children with moderate to severe eczema had the filaggrin gene defect, while only 15% of children with mild eczema had the gene defect. So, so there's actually studies, there's actually tests you can test now for the filaggrin gene. I know the Mayo Clinic in America does tests, but there's some good signs. I think I have that defect because basically if you've had a dry skin since childhood, that's a good sign. There's also what we call palmar hyperlinearity. So what that is basically if you look at your palms, and I'm looking at my palms now, and you'll see that it looks a little bit older than you are, basically. There's quite deep lines. Then there's...
Sorry, I had a friend with eczema when I was a kid, and I remember her palms being very dry and old, wrinkly looking.
Exactly. That's what it is. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And especially if you look at the base of your thumbs, you'll see there's a lot of lines there, lots and lots and lots of fine lines there. And that's definitely what I have. So it's palmar hyperlinearity. And like I say, also just having a dry, sometimes maybe even itchy skin, or even there's a little bit of bumps. They call it Pilaris, Keratosis Pilaris as well. So, so there's a very strong genetic component there. The skin barrier is disrupted. And then, of course, the other genetic component is that sometimes, people have more of allergic predisposition, and that they basically just, the inflammation, there's sometimes inflammation in the body. It's the body is basically just more prone to inflammation and irritation and allergic reaction as well. So there's also a genetic component there.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then of course, then the other side is our environment, because of course we've always had these genes. So why suddenly are we seeing this explosion in skin issues? And it's because, and we obviously also see it in industrialized nations or Western nations, and it's basically our environment, how environment influences our immune system. So we see immune system dysfunction. And if we look at some clues again, so if we look at children, often the research is done on children with eczema. So children that have had a normal vaginal birth, children that have older siblings, children that live in rural areas and have access to dirt, and children that grow up with a dog, they all have a lower risk factor for eczema, to developing eczema. Mm-hmm. So what the theory is, what we think is that children are born with a hypersensitive immune system, or let's say allergic immune system. And by being exposed to non-pathogenic bacteria or good bacteria, these bacteria basically train the immune system to be more tolerant.
To calm down a little.
And to mature.
It's like a multicultural society.
Exactly, not insular. Yes. And so, basically, we're trying the immune system to mature and to not react to all of these things that are not really harmful to us. Mm-hmm. So that's the immune system component of it. And that's where a lot of the research is at the moment. But like I say, skin barrier function is definitely now, because researchers have been looking at food allergens for quite a long time, but they are now moving their focus onto the skin barrier dysfunction. And there's also, it's quite, you can easily help the skin barrier dysfunction by applying moisturizer, of course, emollient. So it's something that you can really easily do something about.
Okay.
Liezel, can we take just a small step back and maybe define what eczema is? Because that's sort of a word that people use when someone's got a skin issue. They go, eczema. A lot of people they go to the doctor with their child and say, look, my child's skin looks a bit funny. And the doctor says eczema. And it feels like job done, And I'd like to sort of maybe put a definition around what it is so that people can make a correct assessment of what they've got. And then on top of that, discuss a little bit more about maybe diet and the emollients and the skin food that we put on it, how that helps. But maybe we'll start with the definition.
Okay. So first of all, let's start. So eczema is the formal name for eczema is atopic dermatitis, which means allergic dermatitis. So what does dermatitis mean? So derma means skin, and itis means inflammation. So dermatitis is basically inflammation of the skin. And I think basically in Australia, usually when people talk about dermatitis or eczema, they kind of mean the same thing. But in general, if we talk about something like dermatitis, it's usually inflammation in the skin. And what we usually think, so let's say contact dermatitis, it's usually short duration and self-limiting. Okay, so if you get dermatitis and skin inflammation from hand soap, you remove the hand soap, the dermatitis is going to clear up. As with atopic eczema or atopic dermatitis or eczema, that is more of a chronic disease. And, I've just looked at some new research yesterday, and basically what they say now is that, because, often doctors would say, the child will grow out of it, but it now is more seen as a lifelong disease. And of course, eczema is very, very itchy. So that definitely defines eczema. It's very, very itchy. And it's patches of dry, red, scaly skin. And it can occur in periodic attacks. So it basically has those three phases. The resting phase, where the skin is almost normal. Then it becomes a bit irritated and itchy. And then we have the acute eczema. And like I say, it's pretty much quite a long-term disease. And onset is usually in childhood, infancy or childhood.
So I'll just a little bit of background for really know my story, because this is something I struggled with for a very long time. Getting this acne that was on my head when I was 18 years old or 17 years old. I got acne on the hair follicles, and then it spread throughout my whole body. And I took a lot of antibiotics for that. And then a couple of years later, the eczema came on in my early 20s. And I would scratch myself until I would bleed all over my legs, my belly, my back. I had to change my sheets daily because I'd have blood on them. It was out of control. I couldn't do anything about it. And then the only thing that really helped, which is what the doctors were giving me, was steroid creams, like really potent steroid creams to put on my skin. And the last doctor that I saw, I went in maybe for around 10 minutes. I was really struggling. You go through good phases and bad phases. It's not always terrible, but sometimes it gets really, really bad. And during one of those phases, I went to see the doctor and I said, look, I've sort of been going down this path of antibiotics and steroid creams for the past 11 years or so, and I would like to get a different approach if that's possible. Maybe we can talk about something else that we can do. And he said, all right, well, let's have a look. And he looked at me under his magnifying lens, and then he reached for the phone and started authorizing the most powerful antibiotic that he can get. Like, he basically couldn't prescribe this without getting an authority for it. And gave me that along with a script for a high potency steroid cream, which I took out, and I felt depressed. Maybe it took the whole thing. Maybe took honestly like 5 minutes or something. The whole conversation cost me $400 and something to see that guy. And I walked out, and I was completely determined not to do this. So I threw the script away. And then it wasn't much long after that I came across eating a low-carb diet. And within a few months, my skin improved more than it had ever. And I'm still trying to understand exactly what it is that went through, because I get times when my skin regresses a little bit. I'm not 100% healed, 90% better, but there's around 10% that I still haven't been able to resolve. And what I've learned over that period of time is that what I put on my skin and what I put in my mouth is really what's going to determine how my skin quality is going to be. And this kind of label of eczema, I found it really treacherous to use, because it gives you the false impression that this is a diagnosed disease and it has a treatment. Which is antibiotics and steroid creams. But I'd like to sort of understand why things like antibiotics and steroid creams do make a difference in the short term, and what kind of dangers we have when we do use them.
Okay, that's a good question. So let's talk about steroid first. So we make our own cortisol in our bodies. It's a powerful anti-inflammatory, suppresses the immune system. And, especially if you have a child or a little baby, if the skin is severely inflamed, if you have that acute stage of eczema, then I think it is advisable to see a healthcare practitioner. And, it might be a good thing then to use cortisone cream. And the cortisone cream is not going to take away the condition. All it's going to do is going to reduce the symptoms and heal the skin in the short term. And why it's important to actually deal with that really acute flare-up is because, especially in children, is because the skin barrier is, of course, now very, very disrupted. And what can happen is that allergens can actually enter the skin, and that can actually then cause a food allergy down the track. So you understand what I'm saying there? So let's say allergen enters the skin, let's say dust mite or even maybe a food particle, like a protein part of a food particle, it's now in the bloodstream. So basically the immune system's going to say, what's this foreign thing? And it's going to make an antibody to it. And so that can actually then cause food allergies down the tracks. So it's so important to really deal with that acute inflammation. And of course, it's also very painful, especially for a child. So you want to clear it up. So that's the first thing. And, if you use it in a short term, you use it like the doctor has prescribed, then there should not be any side effects. It should be safe. The second thing is if it does get infected, so it can also have a secondary bacterial infection. And that can be an issue, especially, again, if you have a very young child. And that's why it's also important to get that sorted out very quickly because, of course, a bacterial infection can spread to the rest of the body. So it is quite a serious thing. And like I say, so if it's acute, really, really, really inflamed, then it's really good to get some support from your health practitioner. But of course, these things are not going to help in the long term. So, while you deal with that acute flare-up, then also deal with the diet, deal with the gut, and also, make sure that the rest of the skin is really well moisturized. So, and of course, natural treatment is all about, treating in the long term and also preventing those flares. Preventing it from getting so bad and also preventing it from actually turning up in the first place as well.
That's really good advice in terms of making sure that the currency is not compromised and to get people back on track. And things like steroid creams are miraculous in the turnaround. Like I found them, if I had eczema and I put on the steroid creams, the next morning I'd wake up and my skin would look, 5 times better, which was just incredible to see. I never, thought that it would happen that quickly, but they're miraculous in the way that they do things. But I found, for instance, still on my skin now, there's scarification and signs of aging and thickening of the skin that's happened over the years of using this. And it's sort of actually using Weleda products, which I've been using exclusively over the past, I don't know, now 6 months or something. It's really helped soften my skin again and clear up a lot of the discoloration. Like there was a discoloration in my skin from where I used to scratch a lot, and it
makes the scars.
And that's helped a lot. But I'm very hesitant to use these things ongoing, and it seems like, because I know from my personal experience that doctors will continue to re-prescribe these things for you. And you mentioned a little bit about gut health, and maybe you can lead into that a little bit more and tell us about what it is that kind of experience that I had with the doctors around steroid creams and antibiotics. Maybe it's sort of given me tainted my experience a little bit, because it was a diet of these things for around 15 years or something, and it just I haven't had to use them since 2011 at all, and my skin hasn't been better. And it's I just still deal with the remnants of the damage that happened to me when I took those things. I know they're very life-saving and very important, but we have to be very judicious in our use for these things, and we have to really understand the risks. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about the risks and the negative side effects that we might experience from using or overusing steroid creams and antibiotics.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess the first risk is, and maybe not always so obvious, is that you rely on these treatments, antibiotics and steroids, and do nothing else. So you don't change your lifestyle and your habits and your diet. You only rely on that. So that's a really bad thing, because you're basically just managing the symptoms and not actually treating the disease. So that's the one issue. And then, of course, so these are very powerful drugs. So they can work really well, but they also have very potent side effects as well. So with steroid use, definitely over the long term, not over the short term, but over the long term, it can thin the skin. And then with antibiotics, it's probably a bit of a bigger issue. Of course, as we know, it's not great for your gut at all. It basically is going to kill the bad bacteria and the good bacteria, and it definitely is going to cause a dysbiosis or imbalance in your gut. And then, of course, that's going to cause a whole raft of problems down the line, especially if you use antibiotics on a regular basis. So digestive issues, mental issues, and also immune issues. So, and of course, as you mentioned, they're life-saving and very important medicines, but you have to use them so carefully, and also never over the long term.
Yeah. Great. All right. So maybe also you can shed a little bit of light for us on aspect of things, because that's where I really started seeing these great results in terms of my skin and how it improved. And now I'm seeing even better improvements when I've supplemented this skin regimen using Weleda products. But before that, it was really most of the improvement and controlling my acne and my eczema came from what I ate. And maybe you can give us your take on what you think ideal nutrition might look like for someone who's dealing with skin issues.
Okay, so first of all, you want to regulate your immune system. And what regulates your immune system is your gut bacteria, or they have a big a role to play in there. So creating an environment that is just fantastic for those good bacteria to grow. Personally, I really support prebiotic foods. I think that's a really fantastic way to, create a good gut environment. So anything that has good fiber, that's going to feed those good bacteria. So I'm sure you guys know about all the inulin-containing foods. So all your leeks and your onions and your garlics and chicory. Those are the type of foods that's going to provide beautiful food for your gut bacteria. And then kefir, all of your probiotic foods, so that already contains those bacteria, but also provide lactic acid to your gut bacteria. So like kefir, like yogurt, like kombucha. So I'm a big proponent of those as well. As far as probiotics, to me, there's just not such clear evidence which specific strain, really helps. So that's why for me personally, I stick rather to prebiotic and probiotic foods instead of taking a probiotic supplement. I have used many different ones, and that doesn't seem to make any difference to me whatsoever. I don't know if you guys have had a different experience.
With probiotics?
Yeah, about probiotic supplements.
I pretty much stick to the probiotic foods more than anything. Sorry.
We use Ultraflora from Metagenics on my daughter, who still has skin issues. She was given antibiotics when she was born. That's caused a problem with her skin, and she's got some minor food allergies or sensitivities. And we still work with her on that, and the Metagenics Ultraflora LGG, I think that's the name of it. That's a naturopath prescribed one. You have to be a practitioner to prescribe it. You can't just go to the shop and get it. But we find, she responds very well to it. Her skin improves more quickly when she is on it. But what I do find, adding ferments to the food also helps heat. And it's looking at like a hunter-gatherer approach to this question. So not just like from a scientific perspective, because the science is backing this up, but we understand now that it's not about just having the one savior in there that's going to go and help the gut out, fix it all. That's all about community the gut, and the more biodiversity that we have in there, but not only bacterial, but also viral and fungal and yeast. All these things are very, very important, which means that we need to sterilize less and eat more organic foods, and make sure that they have been in contact with the soil, and make sure that the children are also in contact with the soil, and we don't have to obsessively wash their hands from things like dogs as well. They're very
Dogs are good. Just not when they bark during podcasts.
Yeah. So that's my experience is that connected I am with a place that has a rich, diverse microbiome, like a garden or a backyard that is organic and has a lot of soil, and our health improves. And you mentioned that earlier in the podcast about that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it's basically feeding, having a rich microbiome. Like we've mentioned, with all the beautiful foods and fermented foods and organic as well, because it's also it's feeding that microbiome, but then also not harming that microbiome. So of course, trying to avoid antibiotics when you can. Of course, if it's really needed, then you need to take it. But also, of course, pesticides. So pesticides are also toxic to our microbiome, so that's why it's so important to eat organic food. And of course, then the simple things that, alcohol is not great for the gut at all, and it's still seen as a very normal thing to do, is to have a few glasses of wine every day. So I'm guilty myself as well. But not fantastic for the gut either. And then, of course, also looking at the products that you use. For instance, a lot of people maybe don't realize, but maybe even more now, that triclosan is in a lot of products. So triclosan is a very strong antiseptic and antibacterial ingredient that's in anything that says antibacterial, so the antibacterial hand washes, toothpaste, and it's in a lot of things, children's toys and furniture and everything. Yes, they put it in everything, and of course that's also not good for your microbiome in your gut and also on your skin. So
I'll add to that like chlorinated water, which is pretty much what everyone gets, and swimming in chlorinated pools and things like that. That's terrible for you. So make sure that your water quality is as good as you can make it. Joanna used a great water filter called Zazen, and that's just awesome. It's just a really fantastic filtration system and a remineralization system. So they have these mineral stones in it, which gives your body the minerals that it needs, because quite often water filters like reverse osmosis will take out all the minerals from your water. But when you put chlorine in the water, you get this antibacterial effect out of chlorine. That's why they do it. They put it in the water to control the bacterial count, so that when you open that tap, it's not full of pathogens, so you don't die from drinking your tap water. And this is the industrialized world that we live in. We have to accept that, but we have to mitigate that at the tap level or at your mains. You can put a filter on the mains of your house to take out the chlorine.
Yeah.
Sure that your gut microbes aren't actually being killed by the water that you're drinking.
That's right.
We've got a So I think that's a really really good thing to talk about. Just a little bit more, because maybe some listeners are new to the show and they don't really know much about a whole foods approach, and they might have come from eating a standard Australian or standard Western diet. Can you maybe talk a little bit about not only what's good to have for eczema, what we should get out of our diet so that we improve our health as well?
Okay, what do you mean? What we remove out of the diet?
Yeah, like what are most people eating that are contributing to like eating? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess what happens is that some people are intolerant to foods that they don't really even know about. So So something to look at is the 9 common food allergens. So they cause about 90% of all food allergies, and that is cow's milk, wheat, egg, peanut, tree nuts, sesame, soy, fish, and shellfish. So, of course, it's not an easy thing to do, to exclude things. But if you are concerned that you may be intolerant or allergic to something, then it might be good to exclude. You can start with these 9 common food allergens, exclude them, and then introduce them, one by one, and see if that's an issue for you. So that's one strategy to use. Of course, it makes good sense to focus on a whole food diet. So anything that's in a package usually has preservatives, has too much salt, too much sugar, and it has all kinds of weird and wonderful chemicals in them. So, and it's just not fantastic for your health overall anyway. It's not good for your gut health. It's not good for your health overall. So it's quite important to try to focus on a whole food diet. And if you do that, then, you might, some of your other symptoms might disappear as well. So those are the 2 main things I can think of right now. And that's, as we also mentioned before, all of the cultured foods, the prebiotic foods, the probiotic foods, they're very important too. And so, some people will have issue with dairy, some people don't, and some people have issues with wheat. It seems like a lot of people have issues with wheat and gluten these days, but that's not true for everyone. I think that's about it. So it's really just whole food diet, mostly plant-based if you can, because that's what's healthy for you and healthy for the environment as well.
Yeah, that's spot on, and that's pretty much what we talk about as well. Making sure that you increase the amount of plants that you eat, and eat animals that have been raised on pasture or are wild and come from ethical and sustainable farming practices, and make sure that your water quality is high, and that what you put in your mouth isn't made in a factory, that it comes directly from a farmer who's looking after the health of the soil, because that will translate directly into the quality of the food itself.
Exactly.
Maybe we can shift a little bit as well, and talk a little bit about your work with Weleda and what you've seen in terms of skincare products and how they contribute to overcoming things like eczema, because I know you have a good eczema range as well in Weleda, and I've used it as well on my skin and have had really good results. But I'd like to hear from you on your working experience with it.
Okay, great, fantastic. Yeah, so we do have the beautiful white mallow range that we've developed specifically for babies with eczema, and so it's fragrance free. And so we haven't added any essential oils, because we find that people with eczema or babies with eczema have very sensitive skins, even if it's a natural essential oil. So, if you smell it, it has this beautiful sweet scent, and that's basically just from the coconut and the beeswax, and that's coming through there. So white mallow is our leading plant in this range, and white mallow is also called marshmallow.
Same thing. Same thing.
The same thing, exactly. And so the ancient Egyptians used to make these beautiful sweets from this plant's root. And so that's where marshmallows come from. But these days, of course, they don't make marshmallows from this beautiful herb. There's all kinds of weird stuff in there. So it's been used as a sweet for a very long time. The botanical name is called is Althea officinalis. So, which means official healer. So it's been recognized as a very beautiful medicinal plant for a long time as well. And so basically the root makes this lovely gel, and the gel then is great for soothing mucous membranes and the skin. So we also use it in herbal medicine for coughs, especially irritated, dry coughs, And we also use it on the skin specifically to take away the itch, so to soothe and take away the itch. So that's the lead plant in this range. And then the other ingredients are, first of all, we have quite a few light oils in there. So they're very rich in unsaturated fatty acids. So oils like almond oil, sesame oil, safflower oil, borage oil. So those fatty acids, basically every cell of our body the cell membrane is made up of fatty acids. So those fatty acids are very natural to our skin, and they can penetrate into the deeper skin layers, and they're going to really help to soothe the skin from inflammation, because they're strongly anti-inflammatory, and they will also help to build the barrier of the skin. And then the other ingredients in there is more saturated fats, so thicker oils like cacao butter, coconut oil, and beeswax. And that's going to sit on top of the skin and form a lovely protective barrier. So it's basically going to stop the water from evaporating from the skin. And guys, I've read a really interesting study quite recently. So they've taken... there's actually 2 randomized controlled trials on little babies, and they've asked the parents to use a emollient or a moisturizer on the baby, on their whole body, for the first 6 months of their life. So they've taken babies that are at very high risk of developing eczema. So, there's babies that have at least one parent or one sibling that have eczema, hay fever, or asthma. So they're at high risk. And so basically, what these parents have done, for the first 6 months of the baby's life, the whole body was moisturized once a day. And what I found was that after 6 months, the risk for developing eczema was reduced by between 30 and 50%.
Wow.
So isn't that just wonderful?
Just wonderful, yeah.
So it's just such a simple thing to do. Such a simple thing to do is just basically improving that skin barrier. And that's going to really help to prevent the disease from expressing. So I thought that was really fantastic thing.
And what kind of creams would you recommend using if you were wanting to do that?
So that's the white mallow was specifically also developed for that. So Weleda said, to use for babies with eczema, but also babies that have a risk factor. So if there's history, if the parents or one of the siblings have eczema, then it's a good idea to actually use it as a preventative.
And from what age?
Basically from 3 weeks. The studies said, from 3 weeks after birth, it was good to start using it then. So, I thought that was really, really good. Another thing that I'll mention is that often people don't use enough moisturizer. So, what the Australasian Association of Immunology, I think that's what I called, suggested was that for children with eczema, they should use 250 grams a week of moisturizer. So That's quite a lot if you think about it. So as if you think about, so one of our white mallow bottles, that's 200 milliliters. So it's roughly the same. So, and for an adult with eczema, 500 grams of moisturizer a week. So, if you already have eczema, then we recommend that you apply this 2 to 3 times a day. Use a decent amount.
It's funny that you should say that, because we were talking about the Weleda products it was on Facebook, I think, and someone commented that they use so much of the skin food. They said they need to be selling it in bulk containers.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think I need to talk to David.
Yeah.
Because I think so.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So if you have it, and that's what I also just mentioned. So so this is we've developed this range to try to prevent those big flares from coming. So, so it's what Weleda also say, it's fantastic for the resting phase and it's fantastic for the irritated phase. But once it is that acute phase, then you're going to need a specific treatment, cortisone, or we also have a rash relief cream. So maybe I'll lead into that then, the next thing, that's our rash relief cream. So it's a herbal cream. It has about 21 ingredients. It's quite potent. So, and it has, extracts of echinacea, calendula, chamomile, arnica, stinging nettle, and quite a lot of essential oils as well.
Wow,
it's
awesome. Yeah.
It is beautiful. It's green. It's very herby. It has a very nice herby scent as well. And it's made in New Zealand, actually. Yeah. So, and we've had very good feedback on that. So this is actually now for, when you get to the irritated or the acute phase of eczema. I will say it's quite potent, and because it has so many ingredients. If you have a sensitive skin, maybe first try it on healthy skin and see if your skin reacts. If it doesn't, then try it on your eczema. So, because I have had 1 or 2 people that's come back to me that said, they have actually had an allergic reaction to it as well. So, because if you're sensitive, you can react to anything. And, it's like I say, there's 21 ingredients, lots of essential oils in there. So, it is quite potent. But yeah, we've got lots of good feedback on that too. Yeah. And then you guys have mentioned skin food.
Yeah, beautiful. Love that one.
Yeah, fantastic. So not that many ingredients as the rash relief cream. So I feel quite confident to recommend this to people with very sensitive skin because I've never heard anybody react to this product.
Oh, that's
so again,
good.
it has. Yeah, so that's good to know. So it has calendula, chamomile, and pansy. So they're all anti-inflammatory and antiseptic. And then it has lanolin. So of course, our lanolin is highly purified and is hypoallergenic. But the reason why we use lanolin, so it's from sheep's wool, is because there's just nothing else in nature or man-made that can hold on to water like lanolin can. It's just amazing. Just the way the molecular structure is, it just holds on to water. So it basically it's just for any type of dry skin, it's just going to really help to moisturize its skin and really help to lock in that moisture. And even, let's say you've applied it now, even in 24 hours time, it still has an effect. So it just has a really very good prolonged effect as well. So yeah, and it's just one of our best loved creams. So for me personally, I use it on my hands and my feet. It's really fantastic, and also on my face.
I use it on my face.
So, yeah.
We recently moved to the Blue Mountains, and I think because it got so much colder here, we have the heater on for longer, and it's also a gas heater which blows this kind of dry air. So my skin started getting really dry. So, what I do is I have 3 or 4 different types of Weleda moisturizers that I use, like the citrus and the pomegranate and almond and things like that. And then I switch these around. But then on top of that, I've been using the calendula oil. So this is the baby oil that you have. And I found that just having the combination of 2 types of moisturizers, so that one is actually a moisturizer and the other one's the oil. And that's just been so good. Like it changed my skin around in a day. And I've been able to just feel like, because when you have dry skin, I can't even move my body sometimes. It feels like my body is restricted by the elasticity of my skin. And
wow.
I can't. Yeah, it's that bad. It can get that bad if it gets that dry.
So tell me, so do you put on
I haven't had any trouble.
That's great. So do you put on the calendula oil first and then put a cream over the top? Is that how you do it?
Yeah, I put the cream on, and then when that's absorbed, oil on top of that, and that's just had fantastic.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so you put the oil on top.
I try it the other way around. What do you think I should do?
Well, if that works for you, I mean, what we usually recommend is first the oil and then the cream over the top, because the oil is going to soak in.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's very high dose polyunsaturated fatty acids.
Yeah.
And then the cream, especially the skin food, is going to sit on top of your skin a little bit longer. Especially the lanolin, it's really thick and it's going to sit on top, so it's going to,
hold it there.
So just
hold
going to hold it there. That's exactly.
Yeah, I don't use the skin food on my body because I'd go through one
you need bulk
in a session. Yeah, I'm a big guy.
And we won't mention hairy either.
If I hair may be problematic, but
maybe try the other way and see. Let us know how you go, because it's usually first oil and then cream and lotion, whatever you use, whichever product you use. And you might have noticed that each of our ranges usually have a body oil as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So how come?
So first of all, it's just because, preference. Some people prefer others, So, but with the oil, you have to be a little bit more, can I say, more careful. So first of all, if you apply body oil, you have to apply it when your skin is definitely still damp. If your skin has already dried out, then that oil just doesn't penetrate. We find. So, because the body lotion is already emulsified, you can just rub it on and, it's going to soak into your skin. So, but personally, I find that body oils actually have a better effect if you use it correctly. Over the long term, it actually, I don't know, it seems to have a better effect on the skin.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but that's my personal, it's my personal experience. Yeah.
Okay.
But of course, if a combination is amazing too, have a body oil and then put a cream over the top, then you have the best of both worlds.
And you smell amazing.
Yes, exactly.
I just never can get over the smells of the Weleda range. It's just so beautiful.
They are amazing. They are beautiful, pure essential oils. Beautiful. They are lovely. Yeah.
I'm the kind of person that sneezes at perfumes, but not at essential oils. Obviously, it's the synthetic stuff. That's right. And I guess the more I haven't used perfume for more than a decade, and I'm so sensitive now. Same.
I can smell it from a mile away, and it just smells so chemical. So
I find I go into the shops and like an older lady walks past that has drenched themselves, and I just think, I can't help, get me away.
Exactly. Yeah, can't be good for you.
No.
The purer you live. I'm sorry. Yeah, you go.
No, I was going to comment on how many products are out there in the market that, you can go to a health food store and there's like a ton of products and they're just full of things that are so bad for you that when you put them on your skin, they're going to disrupt your microbiome and they wreak havoc in there. And, this is one of the reasons why we really love you guys so much is because I use this stuff on myself and my kids and I never hesitate. And I'm really panicky about this stuff now. Like, I don't want anything to touch my skin that I know is going to poison me. And it's just so important to know that this, is out there that is actually good for you and has nutrition and feeds your skin in the way it's supposed to. It also makes it into your bloodstream, which it will. It actually gets absorbed from your stream. That this is all herbal stuff that was based on food to begin with. So it's just really, really important for people to be very discriminatory when it comes to making a choice about the products that they put on their skin. It's a big deal.
Yes, definitely, and especially if you have skin issues, especially if you have eczema, because then you also know that your skin barrier is just not, is a little bit disrupted, is not the same as a normal skin, because a lot of these chemicals, let's say phthalates and sodium lauryl sulfate and all of that, they've probably also tested those things on, intact skin, completely healthy skin, and of course they've tested it over the short term and said, okay, yeah, that's fine. But what about people that actually don't have, completely normal, healthy skin? And also, what about the long term? That's what we don't know. None of these chemicals have been tested over the long term. So we are basically guinea pigs for these companies.
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, guys, Weleda is a company that was started in 1921. Was it something like that in the 1920s? So
yeah, 1921.
Yeah. So I think they have a proven track record of using like the best stuff. This is just incredible stuff for our skin. And Joe, your experience has been really positive with
Yeah, definitely. I haven't had any reactions.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's fantastic. Yeah. That's great, guys. What I might mention is alcohol. So we use alcohol in our skincare products as a preservative, and we get so many questions about it these days. So I thought I might discuss that now. So we use alcohol in our products as our preservative because we don't use anything else. We don't use any synthetic anything in our products, so not even synthetic preservatives. And so we use the alcohol, first of all, to extract the active chemicals from the herbal medicine, from the herbs. So, that's how herbal medicine works. You need to kind of use alcohol and water to extract the active chemicals. And then, of course, it's a preservative as well. And so, yes, if alcohol is in a very high concentration, then it's going to dry out the skin. But if it's in a very low concentration, then it's not going to harm the skin at all, even over the long term. And alcohol even helps a little bit to let the ingredients penetrate deeper into the skin as well. So this actually has a positive thing too. So what I explain to people is that, and you can try it for yourself. Let's say you use pure alcohol or you use something that's high alcohol, let's say like vodka, and you can test it for yourself. You put it on your skin, you will actually see then a white, dry spot. And that's where the skin has dried out. But if you put a few drops of beer onto your skin, you will see that your skin has not dried out at all. And that is basically the comparable percentage of alcohol that we have in the Weleda skincare products. So it's very, very low concentration. And we've tested also our products over the long term, on test subjects, and we have found no issues. So I thought I'll just mention that because that comes up so much. And I don't know if you guys have any further questions for me on that.
No.
No, I just want to mention to the listeners that Weleda has the website has a complete list of all the ingredients that they use and an explanation of what they are. So a complete transparency here in terms of what they're doing. So if there's anything on the bottle that you buy and you go, oh, I don't know what that is because it sounds like a little bit too scientific as a name, I can't recognize it. It's either usually like the Latin name of something or the botanical name of it, and you can go and look it up and just understand what the product has in it. And very few companies will be doing that to that level of transparency. So that'll give you confidence in what you're using. But
that's great.
To point to the fact that they have a large range of products. It's massive. There's so many things and. So one product might not be suitable for you. Yeah, go on, Liezel.
Yeah, that's right. And, all I also just wanted to say is that, of course, if anybody has any questions, they can just email us and we'll usually respond within a day.
Oh, that's good.
So we do these days, because people are a lot more informed and proactive. So we do get a lot of emails and it's my job to respond to those emails. So I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Oh, that's good.
We do have a 10% discount on Weleda products, which we offer with our podcast, as they are one of our podcast sponsors. And we'll put a link and a coupon, the coupon code that you use in the show notes. Just head on to weleda.com.au and use that coupon code. Joe, do you remember what the coupon code is? It's sort of.
I'm trying to think what it is.
Yeah.
I will put it on the show notes. So, guys, we do have a 10% discount for any Weleda products. So if you go onto the Weleda site and use the coupon code Quirky Journey, you'll be able to get 10% off your order. So we really recommend you go and have a look at their range.
And there's also free shipping for order if it's over $90 as well. So that's really
over $90.
It's very easy to spend $90 on Weleda because they have so many awesome things to try.
I agree.
Yes.
Only that.
Stock up good stuff.
Yeah, beautiful.
Liezel, thank you so much for being here with us. I'm sure we'll have you again on the show to talk a little bit. More about.
If people have specific questions, maybe they could let us know.
Maybe we can do a Q&A on eczema or people and have them come. Yeah, have you come back and address the questions that they have.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Thanks for listening, guys. We hope you enjoyed our podcast. Don't forget, we have classes coming up next week in New South Wales. So we have on the 10th, we have a Blue Mountains class, and on the 12th, we have a class in Canberra. So these are our life-changing food seminars. We speak about all sorts of things to do with healthy eating and healing with food, and we demonstrate 6 dishes, and we have a couple of tastings afterwards. We have books there for sale, and we'd love to sign your books for you if you come along. So have a look on the events section of our website or on the events section of the Quirky Cooking Facebook page. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.